Welcome to JK Tells a Story, where real-life dramas unfold. Sit back and enjoy today's tale. I knocked firmly on the door of the apartment on the 4th floor. Daniel Matthews, this is your wife, the woman you've been with for the last 25 years. I am the mother of your 2 sons and the person who loves you more than my own life. I have always loved you and always will, but I have a story to tell you, and it involves me and someone else. After everything we've meant to each other all these years, you should give me time to explain. I'll be downstairs cooking dinner, waiting. You can eat and then listen to my story, I said through the tightly closed door. About an hour later, he came down for dinner. I had prepared expensive steaks and opened a nice bottle of Cabernet. We ate and then I started. I spoke from the bottom of my heart. I didn't lie or hide. Hiding the truth from Dan was over. I met a wonderful person who was there for me when I needed help. First, he helped me emotionally when I was in a terrible situation, and then he took care of me and our children when I was left alone. I began. I sat there saying nothing as Melissa told me the whole story, how after the birth of our 2nd son, she became emotionally distant, how she met Nathan and how he awakened her creatively. She didn't hide anything. I remember the night I came to bed and found the book, Finding Your Creative Voice, that Melissa had brought home. She told me she wasn't feeling fulfilled after Oscar was born and wanted to be proactive. Now I know that this book was just a cover for her affair with Nathan. What she showed me in her writing didn't come from that book. These were the things Nathan taught her. She then told me how she brought him into our home, into our bed, on the same day she took me to the airport in 2010. I was then assigned to a major medical device installation in Saudi Arabia, a 6-month project setting up cutting-edge equipment in a new hospital. The only thing that kept me going in that foreign land was the belief that a loving wife and 2 boys were waiting for me at home. Now, 2 decades later, I've learned that this wasn't true. She didn't even have the decency to wait until I was overseas. Now I knew why Melissa and the children spent part of Christmas 2010 in New York City and the real reason for her periodic trips there. I should have realized sooner, but I trusted her. I also learned why my relationship with my 2 sons had deteriorated. She had apparently silenced them and used them to hide the affair from me. I saw the signs when I returned from Saudi Arabia but didn't connect the dots. I may have had what some call confirmation bias. I could never imagine her cheating on me, so I dismissed the idea. Apparently, Melissa was right. I had been blind, needing guidance to see through the cracks in our relationship. She continued talking, enjoying recounting her romance with Nathan, constantly telling me it had nothing to do with her feelings for me. Although the physical part of their relationship ended many years ago, she still had a strong emotional attachment to him and his work. Her story opened my eyes to many things I'd been wondering about for years. Now everything became crystal clear. As she spoke, I felt my blood pressure rising. Part of me wanted to kill her, but I knew it would only land me in jail. So I listened as if it were some sort of romantic tale. In her head, she believed she had done nothing wrong and still considered herself a faithful, loving wife. Finally, she stopped. Now it's time for us to pick up the pieces and continue our life together, she said. We can overcome this just like we've overcome everything else. I looked at her without saying anything. After what I had just heard, there was nothing more to say. Say something, Dan, she begged. Please, I still love you. I never stopped loving you. I stood up from the table and pushed my chair back in place. I looked at her for a few moments before speaking. Thank you for dinner, I said quietly. Good night. I went back upstairs to the apartment where I had been staying. Good night, she asked incredulously. Is that all you can say after I poured my soul out to you? I stopped and looked at her. For now, I said. I have a lot to process. I went back upstairs, closed the door to the apartment, and placed a chair against the doorknob to hold it shut. I sat down on the bed and cried. The life I had known was over. My marriage had been a lie for the past 20 years or more, and my wife, the one person I loved more than anyone, expected me to simply accept her years of infidelity. She knocked on the door a little later. Dan? She asked. Are you okay? We need to talk, honey. Go away, I said. I finally fell asleep, but it wasn't easy. Then the nightmares started again. The medical equipment I had installed in Riyadh the day before the project began was malfunctioning, and I felt like something was wrong. One moment we were monitoring a patient's vital signs, and the next moment the system crashed, flatlined. The lead surgeon initiated a system restart, but nothing happened. He tried again with the same result. I told him to try restarting it again, but still nothing. Then I had an idea and told him to disconnect all peripheral devices and try again. This is crazy, he said. Do it now, I ordered. In real life, the system restarted, and we barely escaped disaster. The problem turned out to be a corrupted software driver, and I found out about it by chance. We fixed the issue, saving many lives in the process. Unfortunately, this didn't happen in my nightmare, and I woke up with a start as soon as the patient flatlined. I wondered if the nightmare had anything to do with Melissa. The next day, I woke up early and went to work without speaking to Melissa. I was part of a team working on a new cardiac monitoring system for hospitals. Meditech, the company where I worked, received an annual grant to develop next-generation medical devices for integration into some of the new hospitals being built around the world. If successful, the new system could, in theory, predict cardiac events before they happened. Lisa, one of my assistants, pulled me aside during lunch and started talking to me. Okay, Dan, she said. Spit it out. What's going on with you? I don't know what you're talking about, I replied. Nonsense, Dan, she said decisively. I've worked with you for too long. Something is gnawing at you. What's happening? She caught me and I knew it, so I told her the whole story. Oh my God, she said when I finished. No wonder you've been like a zombie for the last few weeks. What are you going to do? I shook my head. I don't know, I said. She claims the physical part of the affair ended some time ago, but she still has a strong emotional attachment to him and his work, even though he's now famous. Part of me wants to divorce her and move on, but the other part says otherwise. I still love her despite everything. Damn, I hate this. What would you do if it were me? I asked. I would have kicked her ass out the moment she confessed, Lisa said. But it's your decision. You need to get your head out of your ass and deal with this. Stop analyzing it like a cardiac monitor and face it. Do you think that's what I'm doing? Analyzing it. Of course, she said. That's how you always deal with things. But this isn't something you can break down into a series of equations. What are your instincts telling you to do? Once you figure that out, deal with it and move on. She got up and threw away her trash. You can contact me anytime you need, Dan, but do something quickly. We need you back in the game here. She left, leaving me with my thoughts. Lisa was right and I knew it. I worked late, mostly to avoid going home. I ate a small piece of the leftover meatloaf I had brought from home and kept thinking about what Melissa had told me. Finally, around 11 p.m., I headed home. When I walked in, I saw Melissa and Emma sitting on the couch under the window. You're finally home, Melissa said. I was busy, I said, heading toward the stairs to my apartment. Emma is staying here with us this week to work on the book tour, Melissa said. She had told me the day before that they were planning a major promotional tour for Nathan's latest bestseller at several major bookstores across the country. The tour was supposed to start early next year, and they planned to take it around the world. Whatever, I said. And just so you know, we intend to make my character the centerpiece of the promotional campaign, she added. I stopped and looked at her incredulously. What? Not only did you humiliate me with that man while I was overseas, with our children in the house, no less, but now you're going to rub my nose in it by showing it to the whole world. This is wonderful literature, Emma said. Your wife is a muse for a brilliant writer, isn't she? You should be proud that the world will know her story. Proud? I asked, trying to keep my voice even. I could feel my blood pressure rising again. Should I be proud of the fact that my wife was having an affair with another man in our bed, with our children just a few meters away in another room? And now I should be proud that she's rubbing my nose in her adultery in front of the whole world? You're crazy. Please, Dan, Melissa began. Get away from me, both of you, I said. You disgust me. Just leave me alone. Please don't be upset, Emma begged as I walked upstairs. I didn't want to listen to them anymore. I closed the door to my apartment, locked it, and placed a chair against the doorknob. The women followed me and tried to talk to me through the door. Dan, Melissa begged, please come out and talk to us. Please. What part of leave me alone don't you understand? I asked. Dan, let us help ease the pain and suffering, Emma said. Get the hell out, I shouted, feeling pain in my chest. I heard them leave silently. Cursing was rare for me, and I always tried not to swear in front of Melissa, so I knew my outburst had upset her. Too bad, I thought. I sat on the bed and took a deep breath, hoping to ease the pain. After a few minutes, the physical pain subsided a little, but the emotional pain was still there. I lay down on the bed, still in my clothes, and thought about my options. Divorce was my first option, although it was something I didn't want to think about. I knew that Massachusetts was a no-fault state, and I also knew that marital assets would be divided equally. I decided that if it came down to it, I would give Melissa the house since it meant nothing to me anymore after what she did with Nathan in our bedroom while I was abroad. All the years of work I put into renovating this place were in vain, gone. But I had to make Melissa understand what she did to me. In her head, she felt completely justified and showed no guilt for cheating with Nathan. Then it dawned on me. I still had all of Nathan's books in the bookcase downstairs. He had sent signed first editions of every novel he'd written, each one featuring characters based on Melissa. I found them still neatly arranged on the shelf. I pulled them out one by one, examining the inscriptions. To Melissa, my eternal muse, read one. For the woman who gives my characters life, read another. I sat down and thought about my next move. For a moment, I actually considered shooting myself in the head. In my mind, I was already a dead man walking, thanks to Melissa. I dismissed the thought because I had always considered suicide to be a cowardly act. I could, of course, shoot Melissa, but that would only put me behind bars, and I didn't want to end up as someone's punching bag in prison. Then it hit me, the books. The same ones Melissa and Emma loved so much. Novels written by that idiot who seduced Melissa with his smooth, literary ways. Melissa had wisely displayed them prominently in our living room, but they were still there, mocking me. Now she was going to make me a laughingstock in front of the whole world with these books that immortalized her betrayal. These would be my target. I gathered the books and listened to make sure the two women were asleep. Hearing nothing, I quietly went downstairs and headed to the fireplace in the front room. I tossed in the first book and turned on the gas. The pages immediately caught fire, and I stood back to admire my work. One by one, I added the rest of Nathan's books to the flames, watching as the words that immortalized my wife's betrayal turned to ash. I took off my wedding ring and threw it into the flames, but it bounced off the brick and landed somewhere in the living room. I didn't care. I turned to the women who had followed me downstairs, now sobbing inconsolably, but their cries didn't reach my ears. I wanted to say, now you know how I feel, but I didn't have time to finish the thought. My vision blurred, and pain shot through my left arm. I felt nauseous and struggled to breathe, falling to the floor. I silently prayed for death to take me away from this hell. I woke up to see a man in a doctor's coat standing over me with a clipboard in his hands. He smiled. Mr. Matthews, glad to see you conscious, he said. We almost lost you several times. I tried to speak, but my mouth was dry, and my lips felt stuck together. My chest hurt terribly. Everything's all right, said the doctor. Just relax. Don't try to talk. He waved to someone out of my sight, and I fell asleep again. I woke up later to see a nurse in my room. I got her attention and tried to explain that my mouth was dry. She gave me a piece of ice to suck on, and I was finally able to speak. My chest hurts terribly, I said. She nodded, understanding. It's all right, Mr. Matthews, she said. They had to give you CPR, so your chest will hurt for a while. She gave me another piece of ice, and I savored it for as long as I could. She added something to my four, and I started dozing off again. When I woke up again, the doctor was in my room checking my vitals. Melissa and Emma were also there, sitting on the couch under the window that overlooked the city. The doctor finished his examination before speaking. "How are you feeling, Mr. Matthews?" he asked. "My chest hurts like hell," I replied, sucking on another piece of ice to moisten my mouth. The doctor nodded. "That's normal," he said. The paramedics performed CPR and used a defibrillator several times. "Your chest may hurt for a while." He checked my blood pressure and pulse before sitting down next to me. "How are you doing, really?" he asked. "What do you have in mind?" I asked. "Well, for starters, we didn't find any signs of blockage," he said. "But we did notice that your heart has changed shape." He placed the X-ray on the viewing screen in the room and then placed another next to it. Pointing to the second image, he continued, "This is an X-ray of a normal heart, and this is yours," he added, gesturing to the first one. I had to admit they looked completely different. Mine resembled a kind of vessel lying on its side, with one side seemingly sticking out. "I've read about it, and to be honest, I've only seen it in a couple of other patients," he said. "This is called Takotsubo cardiomyopathy, or weakening of the main chamber of the heart, which usually occurs as a result of severe emotional or physical stress. It's also known as broken heart syndrome. Tell me, Mr. Matthews, has anything extremely stressful happened in your life recently? Perhaps the loss of a loved one?" Melissa started crying when the doctor said this. He glanced at her for a moment, then looked back at me. "Perhaps we should invite one of our consultants to talk to you," he suggested. "Will he be okay, doctor?" Melissa asked through her tears. "With the right treatment, I think so, Mrs. Matthews," the doctor replied. "However, his recovery may take several months. We've put him on some medications, beta blockers and aspirin, and we'll see how he responds. We'll know more when the consultant talks to him. In the meantime, I suggest doing everything possible to reduce his stress levels." "Thank you, doctor," she said as he left the room. After he was gone, Melissa and Emma came to my bedside. I looked at Melissa before speaking. "Why?" I wheezed. "I already told you why. I fell in love with Nathan," she said. I shook my head and waved my hand dismissively. "No," I said. "Why did you let me live?" Her face turned pale. "You already killed me. You should have just let me die." Both women began to cry again. "Please just leave," I said. "You've hurt me enough." "Please don't say that, Dan," Melissa said through her tears. "Don't you know how much I love you? I'll die without you. I'll be back, Dan, and I promise I'll fix this. Please don't hate me." At that moment, a nurse entered the room accompanied by another woman in a medical gown. The nurse led Melissa and Emma out, closing the door behind them and leaving me alone with the other woman. She rolled a chair to my bedside and sat down. "My name is June, Mr. Matthews," she said. "Dr. June Carstairs. I've been asked to come and talk to you to find out what might be causing your heart problem. Do you mind if I record our conversation?" "Not at all," I replied. "Thank you," she said, starting the recording with an introduction. "Please tell me about yourself." I gave her a brief account of my life and my work at Meditech. "So stress is a normal part of your job," she said. "I understand. What about your home life?" I told her everything, how Emma came with the books and threw what was essentially a nuclear bomb into what I thought was a relatively good marriage. I also explained as best I could what Melissa had told me about her relationship with Nathan Barnes. She listened calmly, taking notes and occasionally asking clarifying questions. I also shared how Melissa planned to rub my nose in her affair with the book tour, which led to the book burning incident. So that's what triggered it? She asked. I nodded. I see, she replied, asking a few more questions and writing down my answers. I'll need to speak with your wife before I make my report with recommendations to Dr. Allen, she added. In the meantime, you need to rest. If you feel the need to talk, just call one of the nurses. Okay? I nodded again. Thank you, I said, feeling exhausted. I fell asleep after she left. The next day, Dr. Allen said that I could be transferred from intensive care to a private ward. The nurses and aides did their thing, and soon I was lying in a real bed in a small but cozy room. It was nice to be out of the ICU, and I was finally able to relax. I didn't see Melissa or Emma that day, but Lisa and some other colleagues from Meditech came to visit. Lisa brought me a paper airplane, thinking it would cheer me up. I smiled at the gesture even though I've always hated airplanes. Well, I told myself it's the thought that counts. After eating a black bean burger, the hospital insisted I strictly follow their cardiac diet. I watched some silent TV and dozed off. Melissa's thoughts were a blur as 3 days had already passed since Dan's heart attack. Emma and I had just fallen asleep when we heard the first crash downstairs. The security system didn't work, so I feared Dan had decided to kill himself. I heard more noise as it continued. What is Dan doing? I asked myself. Emma and I ran downstairs and saw him by the bookcase. He was tearing the books from the shelves and throwing them to the floor. We both screamed for him to stop, but he ignored us and continued, holding our ears as he yelled. We watched as he systematically destroyed Nathan's novels, one by one. When he had cleared the entire shelf, he gathered the books and ran into the front room. We followed him, begging him to stop, but he seemed possessed. We watched in horror as he threw the books into the fireplace and turned it on. We cried inconsolably as the beautiful novels Nathan had written, with characters inspired by me, turned to ashes. Dan then took off his wedding ring and hurled it into the fireplace. I saw it bounce off the brickwork and land somewhere in the living room. I made a mental note of where it fell so I could find it later. He turned towards us, looking like he was about to say something, but then he collapsed unconscious. I quickly grabbed my phone to dial 911 while Emma tried to turn off the fireplace, but it was too late. The books were completely destroyed. The paramedics arrived swiftly, and we watched as they performed CPR and loaded him onto a stretcher. They told me which hospital they were taking him to, and then they left. Emma and I quickly dressed and rushed to the emergency room. We were told Dan had suffered some kind of heart attack and that the doctors were working on him. We waited for what felt like an eternity until the doctor came out to speak with us. Mrs. Matthews? He asked. I nodded, and he led me to a small room near the waiting area. Your husband has cardiomyopathy. We almost lost him several times, but we were able to revive him. He's been transferred to the cardiac intensive care unit. Once his condition stabilizes, the nurse will call you. Will he be okay? I asked. We're doing everything we can for him, the doctor said. I sat down and cried. Had I really done this to him? Had I pushed him too hard, expecting him to accept more than he could handle? I had never seen Dan act aggressively before, and I certainly hadn't thought he was capable of something like destroying Nathan's books. Emma held me silently, offering support. Several hours passed before a nurse came out and escorted us to the intensive care unit. As I looked at everyone around me, I felt like they all knew my betrayal had put Dan in the hospital. Nobody said anything, but their accusatory glances burned my soul. I almost lost my composure when I saw him for the first time. He looked 10 years older, his eyes sunken, his skin a sickly gray tin. We sat by his side, watching the monitors, hoping for some sign that he was still with us. Nurses came in periodically to check his vital signs and adjust his medications. We dozed off a few times, and one of the nurses suggested we leave and come back in a few hours, but I refused. I wasn't going to leave my husband when he needed me most. Not again. Emma and I took turns, one of us sleeping while the other kept watch. We stayed there for about 30 hours when Drive Allen came in with a nurse. He spoke with Dan briefly before putting a couple of x-rays on the screen. He explained that Dan had Takotsubo cardiomyopathy, a condition named after a pot Japanese fisherman used to catch octopuses. This condition is brought on by severe emotional tension or stress. I felt like I was dying when Dr. Allen asked if anything extremely stressful had happened recently. I burst into tears when he asked Dan if he had lost someone close to him. Yes, I thought, it's me. I did this to him. Emma held me while I cried. I asked the doctor if Dan would be okay, and he said that with proper treatment and stress reduction, Dan should recover, though it could take months. He also said he would bring in a consultant to talk to Dan. I thought this was a good idea. Maybe a counselor could help Dan overcome his feelings. I thanked the doctor. When he left, Emma and I went to Dan's side again. When I looked at his face, I saw a sadness I had never seen before. I was surprised when he asked me why. I thought he wanted to know why I fell in love with Nathan, but he shook his head and waved his hand. No, he said. Why did you let me live? I was shocked to my core. You already killed me. You should have just let me die, he said. We both started crying again. Please just go away, he said. You've hurt me enough. Please don't say that, Dan, I said through my tears. Don't you know how much I love you? I'll die without you. I'll be back, Dan, and I promise I'll fix this. Please don't hate me. I meant every word, but I wondered how I could possibly make it up to him. How could I make him understand how much I needed him? For the first time, I truly began to realize the devastation my affair with Nathan had caused, and I felt terrible. My God. I thought, I did this to him. The nurse returned with another woman in scrubs, and they escorted Emma and me out of the room, asking us to come back the next day. I was too shaken to drive, so Emma drove us home. We showered, ate, and collapsed into bed, both physically and emotionally exhausted. Emma was so sweet, so supportive. I truly felt blessed to have her in my life at that moment. We lay in each other's arms and fell asleep. I dreamed I was standing in a circle of light. I looked around but didn't see anyone. Then several large heads appeared in my field of vision. I recognized them from the photographs Dan had shown me. They were members of his family. I saw his father, his mother, and some other relatives. They all looked at me with anger and condemnation. His father's face spoke. You killed him, Melissa? It said that I shook my head. No, I said. You don't understand. What I had with Nathan was wonderful. No, said the father's face. You broke his heart. He loved you with all his being, and he trusted you. And what did you do? Please, I begged. I needed Nathan. You don't understand. I understand all too well, said the father's face. Your husband almost died in Saudi Arabia, but that wasn't enough for you, was it? You schemed, you cheated, and you deliberately shattered his heart. You brought this man into his house, into his bed. You turned his children against him. You destroyed everything he held dear. You killed him. No, I sobbed, crying. Please try to understand. You are guilty, the father's face declared, staring at me with fury. Guilty. The other faces echoed in unison. Guilty, guilty. I woke up terrified and saw Emma lying next to me, her eyes open. Shoo, she whispered, holding me tightly. It was just a nightmare. It wasn't real. Go back to sleep. She held me as I cried and eventually drifted back to sleep. But no matter what she or anyone else said, deep down in my heart, I knew those faces were right. I was guilty, and a good man had almost died because of me. The next morning, I got up, showered, dressed, and went downstairs. Emma was already awake, making breakfast. I poured myself a cup of coffee and ate absent-mindedly. We talked about the book tour, but my heart wasn't in it. All I could think about was the look on Dan's face the day before. All of Nathan's books are destroyed, Emma said. They were supposed to be the centerpiece of our tour. What will we do now? I don't know, I said, shaking my head. We'll figure something out. Fortunately, our conversation was interrupted by a phone call. It was Dr. June Carstairs, and she wanted to talk to me that morning about the events leading to Dan's heart attack. We need to get back to the hospital, I told Emma after the call ended. Why? She asked. They want to talk to me about what happened, I said, heading upstairs to change clothes an hour later. We arrived at the hospital and made our way to Dr. Carstairs' office. She asked to speak with me alone first, so Emma stayed in the waiting room. I want to discuss the events that led to your husband's incident, Dr. Carstairs said after closing the door. Do you mind if I record our interview? I shook my head, watching as she pulled out a digital recorder and took notes. When she was ready, she looked at me. Please, she said, start from the very beginning. I told her everything, just as I had told Dan the day before. How I met Nathan and how he awakened my creativity. I explained how I had brought Nathan into our house the day Dan went off to Saudi Arabia, leaving nothing hidden. I even told her about the events surrounding the books that Dan had destroyed and how I had periodically traveled to New York to see my lover. I also confessed how I had enlisted the children to help keep my affair with Nathan a secret from their father. Dr. Carstairs was very professional, taking notes as I spoke. She could have been a poker player. She showed no emotion, never indicating whether she approved or disapproved of my actions. She didn't say a word until I had finished. So, do you feel any remorse or guilt for your actions? She asked. First, no. I admitted. I am, a good wife and mother. I see, she said, making a note on her pad. And how did you expect your husband to react to your affair? I hoped he could forget about it, I said. I thought that after the new year we could go to counseling and over time he would move on. Nathan is famous now, after all. Just so I understand, she said. You engaged in a long-term physical and emotional affair with another man, brought that man into your marital bed while your husband was overseas working, and you expected your husband to simply shrug it off and act as if nothing had happened, right? The way she put it sounded so harsh, but it was accurate. What more could I say? Well, I began. That's basically how I imagined it. Has your husband ever been violent before? The doctor asked. I shook my head. No, never. Dan is somewhat shy and introverted. He tends to keep everything to himself until he's fully processed it. I've never seen him lose his composure. You mentioned the beginning of the year, the doctor said. Why wait for counseling until then? Is there something special about the new year? Emma, Nathan's wife, and I are preparing a promotional tour for his works, I said. The books that Dan destroyed were supposed to be the centerpiece of this tour. I thought we could forget about the past before the tour ended. I see, Dr. Carstairs said. And you intended to display the books, which symbolize your betrayal, to the whole world, correct? Mostly, I admitted, feeling ashamed. She said, jotting something down. How would you describe your husband's relationship with your children? I think it's like most fathers and sons, I said. They're a bit distant now. Dan doesn't talk to them much. Did you encourage them to keep your affair a secret? The doctor asked. Yes, I whispered. And you didn't think that might affect their relationship? I didn't think it would have such an impact at the time, I said. And now? The doctor asked. The doctor asked one more question. Mrs. Matthews, if you could go back, what would you do differently? Honestly, I replied, I don't know. I think under the same circumstances, I probably would have done the same thing, even knowing what it would do to your husband. She asked. I had to think about that. You must have known Nathan, I said. I see, she replied. So, will my husband be okay? I asked. You need to talk to his doctor, she said. Can I go see him now? I asked. She shrugged. Of course, if you really want to, she said. I quickly answered that I did, and I left her office, feeling her gaze burning into my back as I walked away. I grabbed Emma, and we went to Dan's room. After a normal night's sleep, I woke up and saw one of the hospital staff carrying my breakfast. I ate it, and soon after, a nurse came to take my vital signs and escort me to my daily X-ray check. After returning to the room, another nurse came by to help me walk around the ward. The doctor had instructed me to walk around at least twice a day to regain strength. When I got back to my room, I settled back into bed just as Melissa and Emma arrived. How do you feel? Melissa asked, approaching my bed. Not as bad as yesterday, I replied. You look better than yesterday, she said, kissing me on the cheek. That's good, I guess, I said. Of course, that's good, she replied. I need you to come home as soon as possible. I miss you, you know. I'm sure, I answered in a neutral tone. She looked at me surprised. It's true, she said. I love you and miss you. I know you probably don't believe me, but it's the truth. You're right, I said. I don't trust you, but I appreciate the sentiment. Emma came over to my bed, angry. How can you talk to your wife like that? She said. She cried all night because of you. Because of me? I asked. Please don't insult my intelligence. I would never do such a thing, Emma said. But I do have to wonder. Why did you destroy such beautiful books? Do you mean those books? I asked. Of course, she answered. They weren't works of art, I said. They were just novels about a beautiful woman of easy virtue, written by her lover as a constant reminder of her betrayal. A true work of art was what Melissa and I had before she met your husband. They both destroyed that masterpiece, and I understand you helped, as did my 2 sons. Please don't talk about your wife like that, Emma said as Melissa wiped her eyes. Look at her. She still loves you. Can't you put aside your pride and let her love you? You don't understand, Mrs. Barnes, I said, deliberately using her married name. A successful marriage requires more than just love. It requires loyalty, devotion, and trust. Melissa and I swore an oath before God and everyone to be faithful until death. I kept my end of the deal. She didn't. Worse, she lied to me for 20 years. That may mean nothing to you, but it means everything to me. And Melissa knew that when she lay with your husband. You make it all sound so depraved, Emma said. Because it was depraved, I replied. Can't you forgive your wife's mistake? She asked. A mistake, I repeated. A mistake is accidentally leaving the milk out overnight or turning right instead of left. What she did went far beyond a simple mistake. She betrayed me in the worst possible way. She turned our marriage into a mockery, then lied to me for 20 years to cover it up and got our children involved. Besides, she doesn't even think she did anything wrong. How can I forgive someone who thinks they're as pure as the first snow? I turned my attention to Melissa. Tell me something, dear wife, I said. What would you do if the roles were reversed? Let's say you came home one day and found someone you'd never met on our doorstep holding a novel featuring a character who was clearly based on me, only to discover I'd been sleeping with her for 20 years. Would you just forget about it and expect us to carry on as if nothing had happened? Honestly, Dan, she said, I don't think I could ever forgive you for that. But that's exactly what you want from me, I said. Let's move on. What if I told you that I wanted to display this novel to audiences around the world, to showcase the woman I cheated on you with? Would you accept that? No, of course not, she replied. And what if I involved the boys in this, asking them to keep the betrayal a secret from you? Would you agree with that? Hell no, she said. And finally, I continued. What if this woman's family came to you and tried to convince you that it was wonderful I'd found this amazing woman who helped me through a tough time, and told you to just suck it up and accept it? Could you do that? No, Dan, she replied quietly. I couldn't. But that's exactly what you expect from me, I said. So, to sum it up, there's one set of rules for you but a different set for me. Isn't that true? Please, Melissa, be honest with me if you can. Okay, Dan, Melissa said, her irritation showing. You've made your point. Is there any way for us to move forward at all? I honestly don't know, Melissa, I replied. Can you undo the last 20 years? Can you prove to me that I can trust or believe in you again? She didn't have time to answer the question because there was a knock on the door. Hello? A male voice called out. Can I come in? Come in, I said. Dr. James Peterson peered through the door before entering. The last time I saw him was in 2012 when our cardiac monitoring system was heading to major hospitals for trials. With him were two junior executives, VP Sarah Coleman and Director Michael Bennett. Something told me that these people were as medical as our house cat, but I didn't say anything. Long time no see, James, I said, shaking his hand. You look good. What brings you here? We stopped by to see how the project was going, and of course to check on your condition, he replied. How are you now? I've been better, I answered. By the way, let me introduce you to my wife, Melissa, and Emma Barnes. Everyone shook hands and chatted quietly while James entertained the women with stories from my time at Meditech. Although I enjoyed the visit, I suspected there was an ulterior motive. I appreciate your visit, James, I said, but I have a feeling something else is going on. There is a problem, actually, Professor, Director Bennett said, glancing at the two women in the room. Could you please explain? I asked. Of course, Director Bennett replied. We've become aware of a potential security issue that could jeopardize the project. She turned to Melissa. For example, your wife had a long-term affair with a public figure who has a reputation as something of a Lothario. She then looked at Emma before continuing. And, by the way, he was married to a woman with connections to a competing medical technology firm. This is the kind of scandal a rival company could use to gain access to proprietary information on a project like yours. Melissa and Emma lowered their heads. You're not hinting. I began, but James raised his hand. Nobody's hinting, Dan, he said. I know you. I know what kind of person you are, but it's the type of thing that gets people talking. Next thing you know, the FDA is calling for investigations and, well, you know what could happen next. Normally, we would have suspended the project until a full risk assessment was completed, VP Coleman added, which, of course, would include a full psychological examination of the team leader who just suffered a serious medical incident related to his marriage. I knew what that meant. But that could take months, I said, looking at James. I know, he replied. That's the other reason we came today. We stopped by the research facility to check things out, and as far as the board is concerned, you and your team met your contract goals ahead of schedule and within budget. Don't worry, you and your team will be paid in full. Consider it an early Christmas gift. I understood what it meant. The project was no longer in my hands. It would be completed by corporate engineers. Lisa, the rest of the team, and I were officially out of work. Another casualty of Melissa's betrayal. I see, I said. I suppose you'll need my laptop and access card? Yes, that's true, James replied. You can pick them up at home anytime, I said. Melissa knows where I keep my laptop bag. James looked at Melissa. We'll be home later this afternoon, she said. You can come by anytime. Thank you, Mrs. Matthews. I appreciate it. James turned to me. Dan, you did a great job as always. I'm sure we'll be in touch again soon. Get well. Okay? I'll be fine, James. Thanks. They left after shaking hands and saying their goodbyes. I waited until the door closed before speaking. Well, Melissa, I said, is there anything else you want to ruin? Dan, I'm so sorry, she said. I had no idea something like this could happen. I hope you understand that if it had been anyone other than James, this incident could have turned into a major scandal, I said. A lot of people have lost their jobs because of this. Melissa looked like she was about to say something, but there was another knock on the door. For a moment, the old men at work song, "Who Can It Be Now?" popped into my head. Doctor Allen peered through the door before entering. "How are you feeling today, Mr. Matthews?" he asked. "Better than yesterday, doctor." "Thank you," I said. "Good," he replied. "I just wanted to let you know that your tests show improvement, and if everything continues to go well, we'll discharge you in a day or two." "So he'll be coming home?" Melissa asked. "I'm afraid not," Dr. Allen replied. "I've reviewed Dr. Carstairs' report and agree with her assessment that Mr. Matthews needs rehabilitation in a stress-free environment. Everything has already been arranged. We're just waiting for a room to become available." "How long will that take?" Melissa asked. "It's hard to say," Dr. Allen replied. "At least a month, but it all depends on how his body responds to therapy. The most important part of his recovery is keeping his stress levels low. I hope you understand." "I understand," she said quietly. Dr. Allen said his goodbyes and left. Melissa came up to me. "Dan, do you think we'll ever be okay?" she asked. "I don't know, Melissa," I answered. "There's too much damage, and I keep wondering what's going to happen next." "You'd be a fool to reject your wife's love," Emma started to say, but Melissa raised her hand to stop her. "Leave him be," she said. "You heard the doctor. He needs to keep his stress levels low. I know my Dan. He'll analyze it like everything else, and he'll make the right decision." "I hope you're right," Emma said. Melissa kissed me on the cheek. "We'll be back," she said. For a moment, I imagined a Terminator making the same statement, and I smiled to myself. "I'll be here," I said. "Do me a favor and bring my laptop when they're done with it, please." "I'll bring it," she replied. They left the room, leaving me alone with my thoughts. Melissa was right about one thing: I will analyze everything carefully, but I had already decided what the end result would be. About an hour later, Lisa came into my room to update me on the day's events. "I take it you've heard about the project?" she asked. "I heard," I replied. "What happened?" "Well, Dr. Peterson and his 2 assistants showed up just as we were about to launch," she said. "They wanted to know if we could start the cardiac system as it was. As it turned out, we could, and we launched it. Believe it or not, it fired right up, and before we knew it, we were hitting our target predictive ratios. It used a little more processing power than we'd like, but they said it wasn't a problem. Then they thanked us for our work, said we had done a good job, and announced that their engineers would take over everything. They collected our passes, erased our laptops, and left. They didn't say anything else." I asked. "Wasn't anything else going on?" "There is," I said. "Melissa?" she asked. I nodded. "Yes," I said. "We dodged a bullet, you know. If anyone other than Dr. Peterson had been involved, we would have had to answer a lot of awkward questions from some very curious members of the FDA, and we might have lost our certifications to access medical trial data. I'm sorry you and the others lost your jobs." "Don't worry about it, boss," she said. "This had to end sooner or later." "Have you decided what you're going to do about Melissa?" she asked. "I've decided," I said. "I just need more information about this Barnes guy. I keep thinking there's more to this than I've been told so far." "Just don't overanalyze it, Dan," she said. "It's not a cardiac monitor, you know. Do what you need to do and move on." "Good advice," I said. She stood up to leave. "You know, Dan," she said, "if I ever decided to switch sides, you'd be the man I'd want to latch onto." Everyone in the group knew that Lisa preferred women to men. "Thank you, Lisa," I said. "That means a lot to me. Thanks for the support." She smiled and kissed me on the cheek. "You're welcome," she said. "I hope one day we can work together again." "Me too," I said. I watched her go, then lay back on the bed. I was almost asleep when the nurse came in with my evening medication and to help me take a short walk. When I returned, my dinner had already been delivered. By the time I finished, Melissa returned with my laptop. "Here's your laptop," she said. "They got everything they need from it." "Thank you," I said, placing it on the tray. "Dan," she said quietly. I looked at her. "Are you really going to throw away 26 years of marriage?" "That's the problem," I said. "I'm not sure we've been a couple for the last 20 years or so. From my point of view, you were Nathan's dear wife all that time. I was in the house with you and we were officially married, but he had your heart the whole time and he still has it. I just don't understand one thing," I added. "What?" she asked. "You've shown no remorse for what you did," I said. "And you described this romance as something beautiful and innocent. If it was as great and pure as you say, why did you feel the need to hide it from me all these years?" "I didn't mean to hurt you," she said. "So you admit it would hurt me? Interesting. But you should have known I would find out one way or another. I was hoping this wouldn't happen for many years," she said. "Tell me something," I said. "What?" she asked. "When you were with him, did you ever wish you were with me?" I asked. "I always hoped all three of us could be together," she said. "But you never wished for me to be there instead?" I asked. She lowered her head, then shook it. "No," she said quietly. "And when you were with me, I guess he was on your mind?" I asked. She nodded without saying a word. "I see," I said. "In other words, he took my place in your heart." I noticed something else. "You and Emma seem very close. What's going on between you two?" She smiled and nodded. "We've become very close," she said quietly, emphasizing the word very. This explained a lot. Not only had she cheated on me with Nathan, but she was now involved with Emma. "In fact, we were hoping you'd join us at some point," she added. "And the blows keep coming," I said. "How long?" "Quite a while," she said. "She really gravitates toward you, you know. Don't you find her attractive?" "I do," I said. "But there's just one problem." I lifted my hand, showing the imprint of my missing wedding ring. "I'm still a little married, and as you know, I'm extremely monogamous." "I know. Look, Dan, I'm really sorry I hurt you," she said. "I never wanted this." I nodded. "I'm starting to get tired," I said. She took the hint and stood up to leave. "Please believe me when I say I love you," she said, kissing my cheek. I nodded again without saying a word. She left the room, wiping her eyes. The next day, I was transferred to the rehabilitation department of the hospital. My new room was much larger than the one I had before and came with more amenities. For starters, the bed was bigger and more comfortable. There was a small refrigerator and a huge TV mounted on the wall. The facility also had excellent Wi-Fi, so I could use my laptop. I was put on a strict diet and exercise routine designed to restore my body. When I wasn't training, walking, or consulting, I was on my laptop researching Nathan Barnes. I could understand why Melissa's affair with him was seen as a potential security threat. Nathan was quite the Lothario, responsible for at least 6 divorces over the past 25 years. One of his victims was a high-ranking executive at a rival medical company. Several articles on the internet included photographs of Nathan with 5 women at the same time, all of whom were referred to as his companions. Some of the photos were of Melissa wearing outfits I had never seen her in before. Interestingly, some articles even called her his married American companion. She looked so alive and happy in those photos, clearly not caring what anyone thought. As you might imagine, some of the comments on these articles weren't too kind. One read, "You mean married American woman of easy virtue? Fixed for you. Does her husband know about this?" I was almost tempted to respond but decided not to. A couple of weeks after arriving at the rehab facility, I received a call from a friend, Kirkward, who worked for a company in Cincinnati. His company had worked extensively with Baxter designing and building medical devices for hospitals and clinics. He mentioned they were looking for an engineer for new projects. The only downside was that I'd have to move to Cincinnati. I hated leaving Boston, but I didn't see a future for myself here. Kirk said they'd expect me right after New Year's if I was available. I decided to accept his offer. Damn it, I thought. I don't have a job here, and I certainly don't have a marriage, so there's nothing holding me back. I hadn't seen Melissa or Emma much since arriving, which was fine by me. The doctor had made it clear that I needed to be stress-free, and since Melissa's actions had landed me in the hospital, they were told to stay away. I'd only seen them a couple of times, and that was enough. I started researching divorce laws and decided to move forward with it, but I wanted to find a good lawyer to protect my assets. I met with a couple of attorneys who came to see me at the rehab center, and I was impressed with both. After checking them out and seeing their strong recommendations, I just had to choose which one to hire. At the end of September, Melissa and Emma came to visit me and told me that Emma's family, along with Melissa's extended family, would be coming in October to celebrate Thanksgiving. "We'd like you to come and be with us," Melissa said. "For what?" I asked. "This is your family, not mine. The boys will be there too." Melissa added that I hadn't seen my sons in a while, so I told her I'd talk to the staff and see if it could be arranged. "We can come get you if you want," Melissa offered. I shook my head. "No, I'll take a taxi if I go." "When will it be?" I asked. "The second Monday in October," Melissa said. "We'll have turkey and stuffing and everything. Don't you want a good turkey dinner?" It sounded tempting, but I had another idea. "Sounds good," I said. "Dinner will be at 6:30, so we'll be waiting for you," she said. After they left, I spoke with the doctor responsible for my rehabilitation and received permission to attend, provided I returned that evening. I then called the lawyer I had chosen for my divorce and told him about it. "Do you want her served at 6:30 p.m. on the second Monday in October, Dan?" my lawyer asked. "Exactly," I said. "We can arrange that," he said. "Just curious. Why a particular date and time?" I explained, and he chuckled a little. "Revenge, huh?" he asked. "Understandable. Consider it done." I thanked him and ended the call. When the date arrived, I took a taxi and went to the house. I no longer considered it my home. In my mind, it was Melissa's. I rang the doorbell and a puzzled Melissa answered. "Why are you ringing the doorbell?" she asked. "This is still your home." "I didn't mean to be rude," I said. She took me inside and introduced me to everyone. The house was filled with grandmothers, children, aunts, uncles, everyone. For a moment, I was glad I wouldn't be staying overnight. I barely spoke to Emma's family members, just enough to avoid seeming rude. Honestly, I felt like an insect being observed under a microscope. I noticed my two sons and approached them. "Good evening, Oscar," I said, shaking his hand. "I'm glad to see you. Who's this with you?" I asked, looking at the young man standing beside him. "This is Mark," Oscar said. "Mark, this is my father, Daniel Matthews," he added, turning to Mark. "Please call me Dan," I said, shaking his hand that I noticed that Oscar seemed a little nervous. "Nice to meet you," I said. "Tell me, are you two dating? I may be old, but I'm not stupid." It was obvious there was chemistry between these two young men. Mark and Oscar looked down for a moment. "It's okay," I told them. "I only care about my children being happy. Treat my son right. Okay?" They looked at me, clearly surprised by my frankness. Mark smiled and nodded. "I will, Dan," he said. "I promise." I hugged Oscar tightly and patted him on the back. "I love you, son," I said. "Despite everything, never forget that." He smiled at me. "Thank you, Dad," he said. "I love you too." I turned to my eldest son, Kevin, who was with a charming girl. When I looked at him, I realized he would have been about 6 years old when Melissa moved Nathan into our house and into my bed. "How are you?" I asked. He smiled and shook my hand. "Great, Dad," he said. "I'm glad to see you." I looked at my watch. There were about 20 minutes left before the show. "Are you waiting for someone?" Kevin asked, his eyes widening as he realized. Are you going to give Mom the divorce papers? I nodded. Yes, I said. Listen, I know you two kept your mother's secret for 20 years. I don't like it, but I understand. I'm only asking for 20 minutes. But Dad, here? In front of the whole family? He asked. I hardly know these people, I said. They may be your mother's extended family, but they are not mine. But Dad, we're part of their family too, he said. They accepted us and we got to know them well. I understand, I said. Only 20 minutes. That's all I ask. At exactly 6:30 p.m., the doorbell rang as everyone began to sit down at the table. I looked at Melissa. I think this is for you, I said. She looked at me, puzzled, then walked toward the door. She opened it and saw a man in khaki and a light jacket. Mrs. Melissa Matthews? He asked. Yes, it's me, she said. He handed her a manila envelope and asked her to sign it. She signed where he indicated, then looked at him again. You have been served with papers, ma'am, he said. Have a good day. Melissa looked into the envelope and immediately began to sob. By this time, everyone had gathered in the living room. How dare you humiliate your wife like that on Thanksgiving Day, on top of everything else, and in front of the whole family, Emma said, shocked. Everyone else looked at me, puzzled. None of them expected this. How dare I humiliate her? I asked sarcastically. No, how dare she humiliate me the way she has for the last 20 years? Do you think this is humiliation? Try walking in my shoes for the last few weeks. What about the humiliation of learning that my wife of over 2 decades had slept with another man and his wife? What about the humiliation they were planning by exposing her betrayal to the whole world? I stopped to catch my breath as I felt my blood pressure begin to rise. Because of what she did to you and your husband, I lost my family, I said. I lost my masculinity, my dignity, my job. I almost lost my life. My whole life for the last 20 years has been a damn lie. And do you know what's the worst thing about all this? Everyone in this house except me and a couple of other people knew about it, and not one of you raised a finger to stop it or let me know. I stopped to take another breath. By this point, everyone was silent. You could hear a pin drop in the house. And what do you really know about your one true love, Melissa? I asked. Did you know that he is responsible for at least 6 divorces? I looked around and saw many shocked faces, including Melissa's. I also did some research and guess what I found? I asked. The internet is full of articles about Nathan, several of which refer to you as his married American companion. We all know what this means. The photos of you and him are very revealing. I don't think I've ever seen you so happy with me. I took a couple more breaths to control my blood pressure. I made the divorce easy, I said to Melissa. I filed for divorce due to irreconcilable differences, not adultery. I think I was more than fair. I'll leave you half of what we have in the bank. You keep your pension and I will keep mine. The house is paid off, so it's yours to keep. All I want are my things and personal belongings. The rest is yours. I accepted a job offer in Cincinnati and will be moving there after completing my rehab. I suggest you find a lawyer to review the documents and then sign them. My lawyer's number is on the document card. Don't fight me on this or things will get really ugly. I'll go back to the rehab center myself. You're stupid, said Emma's 81-year-old mother. You have 2 women here who love you with all their hearts. Can't you put your pride aside and let them love you? Love me? Melissa literally broke my heart. Is this what you do to the one you love? Like I told Emma, a good marriage requires more than love. It requires respect, commitment, and trust. Melissa showed me none of these qualities with her betrayal, and I refused to be a willing cuckold. By this point, everyone had lowered their eyes, ashamed. I decided I'd said enough, so I grabbed the truck keys that were hanging by the door and turned, preparing to leave. By the way, happy Thanksgiving, I said before walking out. I got into the truck and took a few deep breaths before starting the engine. Once I was sure I was good to go, I looked at the house one last time. "Goodbye, old friend," I said before driving away. This house had been my home for over 20 years and was the only home Melissa and I had ever owned. We bought it at the beginning and spent a lot of time, effort, and money bringing it to its current state. I would miss it, but not the bad memories it now contained. I returned to the rehab center and lay in bed, tears streaming down my cheeks. I wiped my face and vowed never to cry for Melissa again. This chapter of my life was now over. The next day, after breakfast, I noticed several text messages on my phone. 2 of them were from my sons, condemning me for the way I had humiliated their mother. It was a pity, I thought. They were aware of her infidelity from the very beginning. I understood that they were keeping her secret out of loyalty and a desire to please their mother, but at that moment, I was not very happy with them. Melissa sent me a text asking me to call off the divorce. This won't happen, I thought. I answered with a firm no. When I returned from morning therapy, I saw a young couple standing at the door of my room. "Good morning," said the young woman. "I don't know if you remember me from yesterday, but I'm Simone, and this is my husband, George." I vaguely remembered them from the previous day. "Can we come in and talk?" she asked. "Sure, why not?" I said. "Sorry, but yesterday was a bit of a crazy day. If I'm not mistaken, you were Emma's daughter, right?" "Yes," she said. "It was a bit of a crazy day. I was 13 years old when I first met Aunt Melissa and your 2 sons. When she and my mom went back to Boston, I asked Mom if they were cheating on each other. She said yes and that you knew about it and approved of it. I didn't quite believe it then, but I didn't say anything. Now I understand that you didn't know." "No," I said. "I trusted her all these years and never thought she would do something like this. I found out when your mother brought those books into the house after your father became famous." "It's terrible," she said. "I'm so sorry for you. I'm really sorry." "What's done is done," I said. "I'm sorry I ruined your Thanksgiving dinner." "No, it's okay," she said. "I knew a little beforehand. Aunt Melissa had set up a seat for you, and the empty chair was at the table. You were right about most of what you said. We all knew, and none of us did anything to stop it. But not everyone approved of it." "About what?" I asked. "Oh, don't get me wrong," she said. "I love my dad. I still do, but I know he was what you would call a Lothario. He took what he wanted when he wanted. He loved my mother, and she loved him, so they stayed together. And yes, she also had lovers. I didn't approve of this, but there was nothing I could do. George went through something similar, and I saw how much pain it caused him. It took him a long time to recover from that. At least I didn't end up in the hospital," George said. I smiled at this. "Is it true that her infidelity landed you in the hospital?" Simone asked. I nodded. "Yes," I said. "It even has a fancy name. It's very similar to a heart attack. That's why I'm here." "I'm so sorry," she said, placing her hand on my arm. I saw that she was sincerely sympathetic. "It's okay," I said. "They are putting me back together. When they're done, I'll go to Cincinnati." "You did the right thing by divorcing your wife," George said, "and I applaud you for destroying those books. But at some point, you will have to forgive your wife so you can move on. Trust me on this." "Thank you," I said. "I'm not ready to do that yet." "Maybe after the divorce is finalized," Simone said. "Melissa still doesn't think she did anything wrong," I said. "Maybe she'll change her mind," Simone said. "Perhaps," I said. "But I'm not going to stand by and wait for it." We talked for another half hour before they got up to leave. "Please accept our invitation to visit us in New York someday," Simone said. "Maybe for the holidays. You will always be a welcome guest." "Thank you, Simone," I said. "I appreciate it. Perhaps I'll come someday." George and I shook hands, and Simone kissed me on the cheek before they left. After my day of therapy and consultation, I had another visitor. Emma. She didn't look too pleased. Please, Emma, I said. If you're going to tell me that I should forgive Melissa and take her back, don't waste your breath. Okay, she said. I won't. I just want you to know that she's hurting just as much as you are, perhaps even more. How can that be? I asked. I thought she had everything she wanted and a new family to boot. She cries every night, Emma said. She also has nightmares. Nightmares about your dead parents judging her for what she did. So she still has a conscience, I said. But it's a little late, isn't it? She loves you, Emma said. And to be honest, so do I. Why can't you let us love you and heal your heart? As I thought about her words, I had an idea. You know, it just dawned on me, I said. You don't understand what I'm going through because you've never been in a committed relationship. This is ridiculous, she said. I was married to Nathan for many years. It's true, I said. But let's admit it, neither of you was faithful to the other. Both took lovers outside of marriage. You can't understand the concept of fidelity because you've never tried it. You can't know what it's like to love someone exclusively, only to have them break your heart. It would be like me trying to explain a cardiac monitor to someone who has never seen medical equipment. What do you suggest? She asked. I'm just making an observation, that's all, I said. So are you really going to get a divorce, no matter what it does to your wife? She asked. Yes, I said. In the end, she gave herself to Nathan for 20 years without thinking about what it would do to me. That's not true, she said. Melissa has often said that she never meant to hurt you, that she never disrespected you. And by the way, I said, Nathan did too. Maybe not with words, but they both disrespected me with their actions and lies. So this is your final word? She asked. I nodded. Almost, I said. She turned our marriage into a mockery, humiliating me, took away my masculinity and dignity. I must restore justice. It's a shame, she said. I'm really sorry. I smiled at this. I had no doubt that Emma was good in bed. She was certainly easy on the eyes, but there were principles here that she simply could not understand, and I was tired of trying to explain them to her. Perhaps sometime in the future, she began. Not until I get divorced, I said. I'm still technically married, and I am exclusively monogamous. Emma kissed me before she started to leave. You didn't say no, she said. So there is hope. My rehabilitation continued as planned, and my cardiac condition improved. It helped that Melissa and Emma had finally decided to leave me alone for a while. About 2 weeks after that terrible Thanksgiving, I received a call from my lawyer on Monday. How are you feeling, Dan? He asked. Better, I said. I'm getting stronger. Why? Well, he began. Melissa wants to meet with you one more time before she signs the papers. Is she challenging something? I asked. No, Dan, he said. She just wants to talk to you one last time. What do you think? I asked. What can it hurt? He asked. A quick meeting. You stand your ground. Let her speak. Then she signs. Okay, I said. Let's make this happen. Is it possible to do this here in the rehabilitation center? I don't see any reason why not, he said. I'll get a notary, and we'll close this case. We made an appointment for 2 days later in my room at the rehab center and ended the call. I made sure to inform the nurses so we wouldn't be interrupted. 2 days later, my lawyer and I were sitting in my room when Melissa and her lawyer walked in. We introduced ourselves, and I turned to Melissa, noticing that she looked like she had been crying a lot. How are you holding up, Melissa? I asked. What do you think? She asked. I told you that I would love you for the rest of my life, but apparently, that's not enough for you. You wanted this meeting, I said. So let's get down to business. She sat down and looked at me, spinning the rings on her fingers. Straight to the point then, she said. Okay, Dan. I don't want this divorce. I want us to fix what's wrong, put it behind us, and move on. And how are you going to do this? I asked. Do you have a device that can take us back in time to the moment before we met Nathan? Can you bring yourself back? Or do you think I should just ignore what you've been doing for the last 20 years? Don't be stupid, Dan, she said. I told you that I still love you and always will. Isn't that enough? No, I said. We've talked about this before. Do you think it was completely normal to cheat on me, to bring another man into our home and into our marital bed while I was abroad, and to have our children lie to me the whole time? How can I trust and believe you again? You've become quite adept at lying over the past 2 decades. Dan, I promise I will never do anything like that again, she said. And should I believe you? I asked seriously. Every time you walk out the door, I'll wonder if you're going to meet another famous writer. Every time you say something, I'll wonder if it's true. Do you not love me anymore? She asked. I never stopped loving you, I said. That's why your betrayal hurts so much. Believe me, it would be much easier if I hated you. I could just walk away and end it all. You just don't understand, do you? You said Nathan was a good man. Tell me, what kind of person is responsible for 6 divorces? Explain to me, please. I want to know. I understand that you are suffering, she said. And I understand that it's my fault. But can't you put it behind you and move on? You mean pretend it never happened, right? I asked. Pretend that 20 years of lies, betrayals, and deceit never happened? Pretend you never brought another man into our bed while my life was in danger abroad? Maybe you want me to pretend those books never existed. Is there nothing I can say or do to change your mind? She asked that I shook my head. No, I said. What you did cannot be undone. Look, this is raising my blood pressure again. Please, you've had the meeting. So sign the papers and let's end this sham of a marriage. She lowered her head, wiping away a tear. After a few minutes, she nodded. Okay, Dan, she said. You win. I will sign the documents since you are so determined to throw away more than 25 years of marriage. I didn't throw anything away, Melissa, I said. You did it the first time you slept with Nathan. Melissa wiped away a tear, then took a pen and signed the documents. The notary who my lawyer had brought stamped and signed the documents. My lawyer collected the documents and put them in his briefcase. I'll take it to court today, he said. You will receive the final decree in a few months. Thank you, I said. That I turned to Melissa. When my rehabilitation is over, I will come to pick up the rest of my things. I don't want much, just clothes, tools, and electronics. I'll call you and make arrangements. Okay, she said. Do you want my rings? I shook my head. No, I said. I gave them to you. Do with them what you want. I'm so sorry, Dan, she said. I still love you and always will. Please believe it. I nodded without saying a word. She left the room in tears. I signed documents giving my lawyer power of attorney to manage the bank accounts and other legal documents relating to the house. After about 3 weeks, I was discharged from rehab. By then, my lawyer had given me a check for half of our bank accounts. The doctors and counselors gave me my instructions, which basically boiled down to eat healthy, exercise, and keep your stress levels low. I called Kirk to let him know that I would be in Cincinnati soon, and he gave me the address of the apartment the company had given me. After calling Melissa, I got in my truck, rented a small U-Haul trailer, and drove home. Melissa answered after I rang the doorbell and let me in. She looked like she had aged 10 years since I last saw her. I walked in to find that she and Emma had already packed my clothes and electronics. A large TV stood next to the boxes. I checked the boxes and found that everything was neatly folded and packed. They even gave me some dishes, pots, and pans for my new apartment, and Melissa packed some pictures of our kids. We wanted to make sure you had everything you needed for your new place, Melissa said. That I thanked her for this. I loaded everything up and was surprised when they handed me a chest of food and drinks. What is this for? I asked. I wanted you to have enough food for the trip, Melissa said, tears in her eyes. I put the chest down and opened my arms to hug her. She threw herself into my arms and held me tightly, sobbing. "Oh God, Dan," she cried. "I am so sorry. I will always love you." I held her tightly, remembering the last time we hugged like that as husband and wife. "I will always love you too," I said. It was true. Even though she had hurt me greatly, I knew that I would always have feelings for her. Emma came up to us and hugged us both, crying. We stayed like this for several minutes that I broke the hug and looked at them, tears threatening to fall from my face. "I'd better go," I said. "Okay, Dan," Melissa said. "Please let us know when you get there. And remember that we love you." I smiled and nodded. "I'll call when I get there," I said. I left and saw them standing in the yard, waving as I drove away. I got to my new place in Cincinnati, unpacked, and returned the trailer. I called Melissa and gave her the new address. She ended the call by saying that they both loved me. I settled into my new apartment and looked around. I had always loved Boston, but I was beginning to fall in love with Cincinnati. Kirk, aware of my personal situation, invited me to spend Thanksgiving with his family, and I graciously accepted the invitation. Christmas was a few weeks away, and it was the holiday I knew I would dread. Christmas had always been a special time for our family, and it felt strange and lonely not having anyone to celebrate it with. I decided to volunteer at a local homeless shelter over the holidays, thinking it would help take my mind off the loneliness. While serving food and talking to homeless families, I remembered what my grandfather once said. I felt sorry for myself because I didn't have shoes. Then I met a man who had no legs. This certainly applied here. I was surprised when I received a Christmas card from my sons, but even more surprised when I received one from Melissa and Emma. It was captioned, "We both love you and miss you dearly." At first, I felt bad because I hadn't sent anything to anyone. I called my sons, who said Melissa and Emma were in New York. I called Simone and George and spoke to them, then spoke to Melissa and Emma. "We love you, Dan," they said when I ended the call. I threw myself into the work and found it very therapeutic. I would hear from Melissa periodically, and she would always end the call by saying she loved me. In mid-January, I was curious to know how their book tour went, so I did a search. The reviews I read were somewhat mixed, with most critics calling it boring. Something told me that Emma didn't like it too much. By the end of April, I received the final decree of divorce. "Congratulations," my lawyer wrote on the sticky note. "You are a free man." Yahoo! I thought sarcastically as I opened my beer. My life consisted of work and a one-room apartment. Despite Kirk's best efforts, I wasn't ready for dating or going out often. The calls from Melissa and Emma also stopped, which I really appreciated. One Thursday in mid-August, almost a year after Emma showed up on my doorstep with those books about Melissa, I received an excited call from Kevin. "Dad," he said, "you need to go back to Boston." "Why?" I asked. "What's happened?" "It's Mom, Dad," he said. "She's in the hospital, and the doctors don't think she'll make it until the weekend." "What?" I asked. "What happened?" "She was diagnosed with a very aggressive cancer a few months ago," Kevin said. "They did everything they could, but nothing helped. She asks for you, Dad. She wants to see you before she dies." I thanked him for letting me know and called Kirk, who gave me time off and said he would take care of the issues with HR. I packed a few things into the truck and drove off. When I got to the hospital, I saw Kevin and Oscar outside. They took me to their mother's room. "Thanks for coming, Dad," Oscar said. "Emma is with her, but she keeps asking for you." "You're welcome, son," I said. "What do the doctors say?" "They say she has maybe a couple of hours left. No more," Oscar said. "She's conscious now, but not for long." When we approached the room, I was shocked. The beautiful woman I saw just a year ago had disappeared. She looked tired and haggard. Her eyes were red and sunken. She had lost almost all her hair and wore a gray turban on her head. She looked up when I entered. "Dan?" she asked weakly. "Is that really you? You came to me." "Of course, Melissa," I said, sitting down next to her. I noticed she was still wearing her wedding and engagement rings. She extended her hand to me, tears in her eyes. I hugged her as closely as her frail form would allow. "Oh, Dan," she cried, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I'm so sorry for what I did. I was wrong, and I hurt you greatly. Can you forgive me?" I remembered what George had told me last year and realized that this was the first time she had admitted her guilt. I knew I had to forgive her, even if it was the hardest thing I'd ever done. "See, I'm still wearing my wedding ring," she said. "I told you I would love you for the rest of my life." "I love you, Melissa," I said, tears in my eyes. "And I forgive you." She started crying, and I cried with her. Emma took out a tissue and wiped her eyes. Melissa took Emma's hand and placed it in mine. "Please, Dan," she begged. "Promise me that you will let Emma heal your heart." I looked at Emma, who smiled and nodded. "This is fine," Melissa said softly. "We're not married anymore." I nodded. "Okay," I said. "I promise." Melissa smiled faintly before turning to Emma. "Please, Emma," she said, "treat my husband better than I did. Will you do this for me?" Emma wiped away a tear before answering. "I will, Melissa," she said. "I promise." We all hugged and shed tears, and I could hear the boys sobbing as they watched us. "He's a monogamist and doesn't like to share," Melissa said. Emma smiled and looked at me. "Maybe you'll teach me something about loyalty and devotion." Melissa smiled for a few seconds, then her smile disappeared, and her eyes glazed over. I heard the change in her breathing and knew she wouldn't last long. I leaned toward her ear. "It's okay, Melissa," I said. "We love you." She took a few more breaths and fell silent. I looked and saw that her eyes were wide open. Alarms sounded as the monitor showed a flat line, and the room quickly filled with medical personnel who examined her before declaring her dead. Emma, the boys, and I gathered in the corner of the room and mourned her death. Soon her body was taken from the room. The doctor came up to us. "I'm sorry for your loss," he said. "I understand that Mrs. Matthews wanted her body to be donated for cancer research. The hospital will arrange all the formalities for her transfer." We thanked him and left the room, still in shock. We returned to the house where Melissa and I had once lived and sat in the living room, drinking coffee. "I never thought I would return to this place again," I said. "What happened?" I asked. "Melissa got really depressed after you left," Emma said. "I did everything I could, but nothing helped. We went to New York for the holidays, but that didn't help either. She became immersed in the book tour, but became even more depressed when it didn't go as well as we had hoped. The only time she was happy was when she talked to you." "Was she dating someone?" I asked. Emma shook her head. "No," she said. "She refused it, although I suggested it to her several times. About a month before the final divorce, she began to get sick. I suggested she go to the doctor, but she refused. She only went when she was too sick to work. By then, it was too late. She was diagnosed with very aggressive cancer. They tried chemotherapy and radiation, but it was too late." "Damn," I said. "She should have told me something." "There was nothing you could have done, Dan," Emma said. "They talked about surgery, but by then the cancer had spread throughout her body. The only thing they could do was minimize her pain." "What about donating her body for research?" I asked. "She made this decision when she realized she didn't have much time left," Kevin said. "She discussed it with us and said this is what she wanted to do. She didn't want her death to be a burden on the family and thought it might help someone in her situation. Do you agree with this?" I asked. They nodded. "This is what she wanted," Oscar said. "I support her decision." I nodded. "Is there anything else I should know?" I asked. Melissa gave the house back to you, Emma said. She also left everything to you in her will. To me? I asked. She nodded. Yes, Emma said. In her mind, you were still her husband, even after the divorce. She opened a drawer in the coffee table, took out an envelope, and handed it to me. She wrote this for you shortly before she went into the hospital for the last time. I opened the envelope and pulled out a paper with Melissa's handwritten note on it. My dear Dan, the letter began. If you are reading this, it means I am no longer here. I've had a lot of time to think about everything you said last year, and I've come to the conclusion that you were right and I was wrong about everything. First of all, I should never have opened up to Nathan the way I did. I should have trusted you first, not him, but I didn't. I still don't know why, and I could never find a way to explain it in a way that you would understand or accept. I should never have brought him into our home and into our marital bed. I now understand that this was completely unacceptable. I understand the consequences of what I did to you, including your relationship with our children. And yes, they are our children. I understand that I betrayed you and broke your heart. There are no words to fully express how sorry I am for everything I've done. I promised to love you until the end of my days, and I at least held that promise. I only hope that you can find forgiveness in your heart for everything I've done. I returned the house to you and decided to donate my body to medical science. I did this for 2 reasons. First of all, I don't want my death to be a burden to you. Secondly, my hope is that they can find a cure for this cancer so that no one else suffers like I have suffered these past few months. I also want you to find love with another woman who can love you the way you deserve. Emma has very strong feelings for you, and I really hope it works out for you too. I'm really tired, so I have to go. But please remember, Dan, that I truly love you with all my heart, and I'm sorry for all the pain and suffering I've caused you. Your loving wife, Melissa. I folded the note and put it back in the envelope. I looked at Emma, who was wiping tears from her eyes. Have you read this? I asked her. She shook her head. No, she said. I know that she wanted to express her regret to you. She was feeling guilty for the last few months of her life. She really was serious about the 2 of us? I asked. She nodded. Yes, she said. She was very serious. How do you feel about this? I asked. I'd like to try it, she said. We both lost a lot. Perhaps together, we can ease each other's pain. She was right. I considered the possibility of a potential relationship with Emma. She was very beautiful, and it had been about a year since I had been with a woman. I also realized that I now had the opportunity to have a relationship with the wife of the man who took Melissa. Poetic justice, perhaps. I looked at Emma before speaking. I have one question and one condition, I said. What is it? She asked. I am exclusively monogamous, I said. I had never been with a woman before Melissa, and I've never been with another woman since. I'm not inclined to share. Can you live with this? She smiled and nodded. Yes, she said. I can totally live with it. Melissa and I talked about this too. I promised that if we are together, I will remain faithful to you. Well then, I said, I have one condition. What is it? She asked. We replaced the bed in the master bedroom, I said. In March 2024, I just finished filling out my taxes for the year and took a closer look at my finances. The last 6.5 years had been quite exciting, to say the least. After explaining the situation, Kirk was able to arrange for me to work remotely 3 weeks a month from my home in Boston. I had to spend 1 week a month at the company headquarters to work with the designers on my team. Emma kept her promise and even lived with me in my studio apartment in Cincinnati during the weeks I was supposed to be there. After what I experienced with Melissa, I adopted the old rule, trust but verify. Emma understood my reasons and tried her best to gain my trust. Over the past few years, she has done much more than just love me to heal the pain of Melissa's betrayal. She has become my soulmate. Her family approved of our relationship and accepted me as Emma's companion. Even her children started calling me Papa Dan and considered my two sons to be their half-siblings. We spent many holidays in New York with our family, and they came to Boston to spend the holidays with us. They were smart enough not to mention the topic of Melissa and Nathan, at least in my presence. Emma not only taught me to love her, but also taught me enough literature to have an intelligent conversation. As I sat there looking at my finances, I remembered how I once told Melissa that I wanted to retire at 60 and take her on a cruise around the world. Looking at my portfolio, I realized that I could do this now. After some analysis, I realized that I had more than enough not only to enjoy this cruise but to live comfortably for the rest of my life. I just didn't have a wife to share it with, at least not yet. I took a small box lying on my table and wondered if I was doing the right thing. How will this affect my work? Will she accept my proposal? After a while, I realized that I was overanalyzing the situation and decided to let things slide. To hell with it, I thought. It's time to stop analyzing and start living. I put the box in my pocket and grabbed a bucket with a bottle of champagne that I had bought earlier and 2 glasses. It's showtime, I said to myself as I walked up the stairs. Emma's squeal of delight when I offered her the ring was music to my ears. Thank you for your viewing. See you next time. If you enjoyed this, subscribe to JK Tells a Story for more tales.